Fourth String Podcast is back. We're the Fourth String Podcast because no network within the right mind put us on their first string. But we appreciate you guys tuning in today, enjoying us. Wild week again. My favorite game, I'm just going to go and say it, the ending to the App State game. I loved every second of that. Absolutely incredible. I also really enjoyed watching Penn State just beat the living snot out of Auburn today. That
Oh man,
masterpiece. And I gotta tell you, Georgia, I don't know if the defense is better, but it's definitely. I mean, I think at this point you've got to say it's the best defense in the country. Like I know last week I said it's fourth or fifth. I think it's the absolute best now. I don't think it was a better one.
yeah. Did South Carolina score? I think they scored at the very end, right?
They did that.
Was it
So that score in the last quarter was the first touchdown Georgia has surrendered the entire year.
Yep. So I think we were 10 quarters in at halftime. They had been outscoring teams 106-3.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing I thought about it, Ben, was like Spencer Sanders really didn't have a good game yesterday. And I wasn't surprised, not because of Spencer Sanders, but I really just wasn't surprised because it's Georgia. And I think you could have put USC's offense in that situation, Ohio State's offense that had 77 points yesterday, any of them against that Georgia defense yesterday. And I don't know that the result would have been that drastically different. South Carolina made a bunch of errors, but I don't think it would have been that much different. The one team I watched yesterday and I thought, I'm not buying into it is Miami. I thought Cristobal literally lost that game for them yesterday. The offense looked completely flat. I didn't think they had a game plan. Like I didn't know what it was. They didn't want to commit to the run. They had nothing going in the way of passing. I just thought it was a really poor game plan. And then there were multiple opportunities where I thought, okay, fourth and short, go for it, get it, and they decided to punt or kick field goals, and it's just not how you're going to beat a team like A&M. So, like, this was my question with Cristobal coming in, is he loses a lot of those 50-50 games he has going back to even before he was at Oregon, and I think we're starting to see more of that. I don't think he's changed.
Yeah, I was really high on Miami early on, and expected them to have a much better outing yesterday. So disappointed a little bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't hating on Cristobal as much as you were. He definitely did some decent things with Oregon. But
go back twice.
The Canes were supposed to be back, right?
What really I think solidified it for me was Oregon played Utah last year and the first time got absolutely annihilated. Now the second time, I don't need you to beat Utah, but I at least need you to come back with a different game plan and show me you've understood how to make adjustments. And they didn't do that. They played 8 quarters of football against Utah last year and lost every single quarter. Not one time did they make an adjustment. Not one time did they change. And I think that says, okay, in these games where the talent level is equal, Cristobal struggles. Like, great. You're going to beat up on Georgia Tech and you'll beat up on UVA and Duke while you're at Miami. That's great. But what are you going to do when you get into a game where you're playing, Clemson on the other side and the talent level is equal? Like, I know we can recruit, but there's a lot of coaches in this country that can recruit and they don't always yield the results you're looking for. Now, the other thought, too, I had watching yesterday is I think Minnesota has a leg up on everybody else right now in the Big Ten West. I know Graham Mertz had a great day yesterday against New Mexico State. Fantastic. Let's see if he can actually put up any decent numbers against a decent defense. I don't think so. But I watched Purdue in a game they should have beat Syracuse. They couldn't get it done. I think their defense is a legitimate problem. And the offense, which is strong, it's really streaky. Iowa's offense is pathetic. Iowa State, or not Iowa State, but Nebraska is no longer in this mix. Northwestern lost yesterday to an FCS team. So, Ben, I really look at it. I think Minnesota's got the biggest advantage right now to win the Big Ten West going forward.
It's wild, isn't it?
It is.
Just
No, and people think it's wide open. No, I think Minnesota is right now. I think they're the favorite to win it.
I mean, Minnesota's got a good team. They returned a ton of starters as well.
They did.
So very similar to last year. And they just row the boat. That's all they do.
Yeah. No, that's right. So, all right. So the first thing we're going to do today, before we kind of start digging in, is we're going to bring back our top 10. So we're each going to give you a new top 10. I will go first. I'll go quick. So my number one actually is Georgia. So I had Alabama number one last week. And look, Alabama has done nothing to disprove me. And that's fine. This has nothing to do with Alabama. I watched Georgia again and I'm like, I don't know how you score against them. And then to top it off, I think the offense is actually leaps and bounds better than last year's offense.
Yep.
And it's a really, really good offense. Like if you want to tell me USC's offense is great, well, okay. Georgia's offense, I would argue, is even better than USC's. Like imagine if you took USC's offense that the media keeps clamoring over and gave them a great defense, or you'd have the best team in the country. That's what Georgia is. Number two, I've got Alabama. I think they're very, very good. They can definitely beat Georgia. I don't think they are as complete. I'm a little bit worried still about the running game. And I don't think the defense is as tenacious as Georgia's defense is. I think it's extremely efficient. I don't think they allow a lot of points. But as far as just being explosive, I mean, Georgia's defense is as explosive as their offense. They can score points too. I don't see that explosiveness from Alabama, but it's still a very, very, very good team. And then that's where I think those two teams stand out. And then this is kind of where we start getting into everybody else. Number three is Ohio State. 77 points yesterday. I don't care what FBS team you're playing. You put up that many points, you've got a really, really good offense. Michigan's offense looked great again. Cade McNamara, he went down. He'll be out a few weeks. But I mean, I think Michigan right now is just rolling. And you look at the rest of the Big Ten competition, I don't think anybody really is a threat to Michigan until they get to that Ohio State game at the end of the year. Fifth, I have Oklahoma. I had them here last week, and I really thought, they're a little bit of a ways away from Michigan. I don't think they are, Ben. Like, I think Oklahoma has a legitimate shot to get to the playoff and potentially even make some noise in this thing too. Their offense looks good.
Yeah, they
Defense
beat
looks
Nebraska though.
amazing. Well, I know, but I'm watching the way they're playing. It's perfect. Like the defense can get after it. Defense can pressure your quarterback. They force turnovers. They have an explosive offense. They look really, really good. Number six, I'm going to keep USC up there. I had them there last week. Actually, the game against Fresno State, that's the most impressive I think they have looked to this point. That was a really, really nice win. Fresno State, I know they're group of five. That is probably one of the 10 best group of five teams in the country. So to beat them like a drum, it does say something about USC. And I'll tell you, Ben, I started looking at the Pac-12 yesterday. I know that first week they didn't look great, but the more I watch of the Pac-12, the more I feel like this isn't a joke of a conference anymore. Washington's real, Utah is real, USC is real. I don't know what UCLA was doing with South Alabama yesterday. That's fine though. And then you've got teams like Oregon State who are really, really good too. And Oregon beat the pants off of BYU, who we all liked yesterday as well. So I've got USC at 6. Clemson I've got at 7. The more I watch them, Ben, it's like I keep waiting just for the offense to do something, but the more I watch, the more concerned. 13-6 at half yesterday against Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like a playoff team. 8th, I've got Kentucky. Love Will Levis. I don't know that they have enough explosive pieces to really make a run at Georgia, but there's not a lot of other teams you can put in the spot either. Ben was kind of telling me how he was putting together his top 10. He's like, I have no idea who to put at 8. In number 9, I've got Tennessee. Tennessee's got real problems on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively, they can explode on anybody. And I'm going to be really interested to watch, can this offense keep up that pace whenever they play Georgia? And then 10th, I'm going to round it out with Oklahoma State. I have real concerns about them on the defensive side, but Spencer Sanders, phenomenal quarterback. Mike Gundy's a phenomenal head coach. that's still a very solid football team.
Yep, solid top 10. And it's interesting this year how many upsets we've had so far very early, and how much I don't know, the chaff has been separated from the wheat so quickly this season. So
Yeah.
yeah, the cream of the crop is definitely rising quickly.
Yeah, I'll make one point though, Ben, because I was sitting there watching the LSU Mississippi State game last night, which was great. And I
Hmm.
just kind of started thinking about this, like going forward, like we're going to have a 6 team or a 12 team playoff rather.
Yep.
And I'm starting to think, okay, here's the teams that I think are going to be contending this thing for this thing every year. Like I think Alabama and Georgia definitely.
Yep.
Ohio State, I think, is. And then you start thinking about the other teams that are starting to make some noise, like Michigan will be there. I think USC will be there. Texas, I think going forward has a real program, and you are starting to see this thing build momentum and kind of piece itself together. And it's like we're going to have a 12-team playoff, but 8 to 9 powers in this playoff every year, kind of spread across geographically. That's been the one thing the sport has been missing the past, I'd say, 15 years, is it's really just been so focused on Georgia, Bama, Clemson, maybe Ohio State makes a run, and that's really been about it. And now I think we're starting to see the sport's becoming less regional. And I think long term, that is great. And if LSU starts to make some noise as a program, that's going to make the SEC a ton of fun, and the rest of the country still fun too. So I'm excited about the sport going forward.
Yeah, the interesting thing is you've got so many high-powered teams in the SEC West that you could have some, two-loss teams that made some big upsets be the third or fourth team in the SEC that still gets in, which is
Yeah, and
wild.
I'm interested to see how they shuffle around the SEC once Texas and Oklahoma get in.
It's got to
I'd
be a pod
really like
system.
them to see, I'd really like it to either have 4 divisions or just completely do away with divisions or pods or whatever and just come up with something a little bit different, because I think the West is just so overloaded compared right now to the East. And then you look at the teams that are going to be coming in, you're adding 2 more Western based teams into it. You can't make it a West East thing anymore.
Nope. Yeah, the way that I've seen it is a pod system with a dedicated rival, and then every 4 years you play one of the other pod teams.
Yeah. And I like that setup. All right. So Ben, let's get to your top 10.
Yep. So my top 10, just like you, got Georgia. I put them up there before you did. So trendsetter hashtag there. Uh, Look, Georgia is crushing teams. I can't believe how high powered their offense looks. And their defense, I knew they were going to be lights out because the way that Kirby Smart brings guys in, develops them, rotates them throughout his defense. Here's the thing: they could lose another 4 or 5 guys in the NFL draft and still be fine because of all the playing time that the guys behind the guys they're going to lose are getting right now. That's how good Georgia's defense is and how Kirby Smart recruits that defense. It's insane. Stetson Bennett coming as a walk-on who led them to a national championship and still was being made fun of at the beginning of this season looks incredible. He's not necessarily the stature part of a high-powered quarterback, but my gosh, is he in tune with
He's
all of his players?
got to be in the Heisman
Yeah,
discussion at this point. I
he
mean, I
has
know it's
to.
early, but
He's putting up insane numbers. He's throwing perfect passes. He runs this thing like a conductor of a freight train. He's just going to run through anyone. It's insane. Walk on transfer, Stetson Bennett could lead them back to another national title berth. It's wild.
it is. Yeah.
Number 2, Alabama. Look, Alabama's got the best recruits, the best coach, and they have one of the best quarterbacks in the NCAA. They have some challenges right now, which I think is great. If Auburn was better, then I'd think it was much better, but that's okay. But it's Nick Saban, so they'll continue to get better throughout the year, and they don't play Georgia until the SEC title game, so that's going to be a big one then. They're going to stay undefeated probably until that point. Ohio State, number 3. Uh, they finally figured out the offense. It took a little while. We knew that they were going to be good. They had a lot of wide receivers leave, and so they had to fill those holes. Guys have stepped up. CJ Stroud is looking incredible. Way to go, Ohio State. Now crushing teams like you should be. Michigan, the more and more Harbaugh has the guys out on the field this year, the more and more of a genius he looks like, especially with McNamara going down. Now, JJ McCartney being the starter that he named a starter is truly the only guy that can lead the team. It's amazing that he had 2 quarterbacks that could take your team to a potential playoff berth. And now that contention is no more. He's just got to keep the other guy healthy. But McCartney looks good, man. Like everything that Michigan is doing is clicking. I thought there was going to be some significant drop off with them, and I've just been crazy impressed.
Yeah, they look
USC,
great.
USC, I've got at number 5. I know you got them at number 6. You're finally starting to believe. Look, I thought this team was going to be great because of the pieces that were brought in here, and they are slowly bringing it together, but quickly becoming one of the most high-powered offenses that we're seeing. So I still have USC to win the Pac-12, potentially make it in, depending on what happens between the shakeout of the SEC and Big Ten. Next, I've got Oklahoma at number 6. They're starting to come into their own. They're beating teams that don't really matter, but Oklahoma has some of the best recruits. They've got a really solid defensive coach. They destroyed Nebraska as we expected. When Nebraska first scored on that first drive, I was like, oh, look at this. And then everything fell off. Oklahoma's still the powerhouse of the Big 12. They'll have a challenge when it comes to Texas, but I don't think anyone else besides maybe Oklahoma State, who is my next at number 7, may challenge them. And Oklahoma State continues to do great on offense. Their defense is not as strong as you would hope for a contender to win. So I think when it comes down to those two playing, Oklahoma will probably win it. And that's why they're ranked above them. But right now, Oklahoma State still looks really good. Got to keep them in the top 10. Following them, I've got Clemson. Look, Clemson's the best team in the ACC, but I don't know if they're one of the best teams in the nation. They just haven't showed it to me yet. Week in and week out, I'm still looking for Clemson to kind of turn on the afterburners, and they struggle. And I'm used to watching teams struggle. I'm an Auburn fan, and man, you can't live that way every single week and expect to have every play go your way. You got to beat teams, and I need Clemson to start beating teams for me to raise them. Ending out the top 10, I've got Kentucky at number 9. Kentucky continues to impress. Mark Stoops is doing some great things. And, that entire offense and defense looks impressive. We'll see how they contend in the West or in the East with Georgia. And then last, I've got Ole Miss. Just because I didn't have anyone else to put in there and they're undefeated and they beat the crap out of Georgia Tech, who Clemson struggled with. So Ole Miss beat Georgia Tech 42-0. I think Clemson beat Georgia Tech in like the fourth quarter. And that was it. So, look, Ole Miss is back, and they'll definitely beat
the crazy thing
teams
about that Ole Miss game yesterday is the amount of rushing yards they had. I'm pulling it up now. It was like over 200 rushing yards. And I mean, when you think about Lane Kiffin, you think, oh, this is a great passing offense. He had 316 rushing yards yesterday on 62 attempts.
Wow.
I had this game on. Their offensive line just got such an incredible push the whole game. I really think, they're kind of in this position where they can beat anybody, including Bama, on any given week. They are not going to win the West, I don't think. But I think they're going to be one of these teams we get at the end of the year. They're like 10-2, 9-3. They've got a massive, massive win. They've upset somebody's season. It's a really, really fun team to watch. And I do wonder how much longer does Lane Kiffin stay there? Um, I mean, I don't know which program he would go to at this point. Maybe Nebraska wants to go after him. And I think it'd
Why
be a
would he
really
do
good
that?
fit. What?
Why would he move to a cornfield when he could be the next in line for the Alabama job?
Well, he could still be the next in line for the Alabama job going to Nebraska. I don't
I don't
think,
know. That
and
place is a
I don't
dumpster
think, and
fire.
I think too, and this is kind of what Sarkeesian I think saw last year is like you could technically be next in line for the Alabama job and not get the Alabama job. I mean, who knows who's next in line for? Like I've heard Dabo Sweeney's next in line. I don't think anybody truly knows. And if you stay at Ole Miss and you start going 6-6 and 7-5, you're not going to get it. The
He's
reality
building a
with
program.
the reality with Nebraska is it is still a premier program in the country. Um, they still have tons of financial backing that I think Ole Miss doesn't quite have. Like I could understand if he wanted to go there and kind of bring Nebraska back. Now, I'm not saying he would do it, but I'm just saying, like, if you start looking at the SEC, you're going to bring in Texas, you're going to bring in Oklahoma. Where does Ole Miss fit in with all of that? And I don't know where they fit in even with a good coach. But this year, you're all right. They're a great program. All right, let's go to if we had a mailbag. We don't have a mailbag. Nobody writes us mail. So I think we got like 5 listeners. But you know what? If people wrote mail into us, here's what they would say. So the first thing is Notre Dame. Their recent struggles have been. Does that say
Hmm.
more about Brian Kelly being gone or Marcus Freeman's issues as a head coach? And I'd like to take the lead on this one because I
Please.
feel like I've been on the leading edge of Notre Dame and Brian Kelly for the past like decade. So here's the thing the media, and I don't really understand it, but media and fans forever keep telling me that Brian Kelly isn't a great coach. But you know what's really interesting, Ben? Notre Dame before Brian Kelly was nothing. He goes there, takes them to a national championship, takes them to 2 college football playoff appearances, and then the second he leaves on a team, which by the way, last year he said, I think this next year's Notre Dame team is going to be the most talented and best team we've ever had. They didn't lose a bunch of players. Most of their players stayed in the program. They keep the same quarterback. And yet, once he leaves, Notre Dame has fallen to 1-2. And their win, they struggled to put away Cal yesterday. They're going to go, by the way, this week, they're going to go to North Carolina. Now, Notre Dame is favored by a point. North Carolina is undefeated. North Carolina has one of the most explosive offenses in the ACC. They're going to put up some points, and I'm interested to see how does Notre Dame react to all of this because I don't know that it's going to be really good. I think this game is going to go in the Tar Heels' favor, in which case Notre Dame would fall to 1-3. What I've watched from Notre Dame, they look almost identical to Notre Dame football before Brian Kelly. And I think this is more evidence of this program cannot bring in the premier athletes that your Oklahomas, your Alabamas, your USCs can bring in. There's a lot of reasons for it. We've talked about it before, but they just can't do it. And Marcus Freeman, he might be a good coach. We don't know, but he is not of the savvy of Brian Kelly, who I think is one of the best coaches in the country. And then I watched LSU yesterday, and I watched him coach circles around Mike Leach. This is a really good Mississippi State team. It's a really, really good offense. They've got playmakers on the defensive side. They could not get by LSU yesterday. The fourth quarter of that game, LSU completely controlled it. I am really, really high on Brian Kelly right now. And he is, by the way, the reason Notre Dame was anything over the past decade.
Yeah, I don't want to hate on Marcus Freeman yet. So if it's is this
So,
a
yeah. Yeah, I'm not hating on Marcus Freeman yet
no,
either.
yeah. It's like is this a showing that uh Marcus Freeman doesn't have a handle of Notre Dame? No, I don't think so. I think he seems like a great coach. He seems like a great guy. Give him time to kind of build out this program the way he wants to run it. I know he was their defensive coordinator, but he was really only there a year, and he was under Brian Kelly during that time. I think Brian Kelly just lifts up players that he brings in and develops to be better. And when you play a really difficult team, Brian Kelly coached Notre Dame teams fell apart. But when he played his regular schedule and prepped for the teams that they knew they were going to play in long-term advance, they had a decent performance over the past decade. I never thought Brian Kelly was a bad coach. If I did, I would have, laughed my ass off about how much LSU was paying him. Clearly, we knew that he was going to be a good coach. He should be undefeated right now if it wasn't for, not having a good kicker.
Yeah.
So the Brian Kelly that you've been talking about, I completely agree. Solid coaching job. I hate that he's at LSU because he's going to make LSU good again. And I just think we need to give Marcus Freeman some time. The thing is that this year, so Notre Dame typically doesn't have as tough of a schedule as they have this year, at least early on. This year, they have a tough schedule. Now, granted, the Marshall game, I don't know what the hell happened there. But North Carolina, BYU, and Stanford coming up are not easy games. And there's a chance Marcus Freeman doesn't win another one until they play UNLV.
Well, and you start looking at the rest of the schedule, Ben. They're at North Carolina this week. They're going to get BYU on October 8th. Now, that game's not actually at home. It's in Las Vegas. Then they're going to get Stanford. I don't think any of those are guarantees. Now, they'll beat UNLV, I think.
Yeah.
And then October 29th, they go to Syracuse. But, Ben, I've watched Syracuse. I don't know. Maybe it's just early in the year, but they look like a real football team right now. And if you look at
it's weird.
The past two games with Notre Dame, I don't know that Marshall and Cal are definitively better than Syracuse. So if you're going to struggle there, no reason you can't struggle against Syracuse. Then they're going to get Clemson, Navy, Boston College. They should win, and then they're going to end the year at USC. Well, when we started the year, Ben, I looked at the game at USC, and I'm like, toss up. I think it probably leans Notre Dame. Now I look at it, I'm like, USC should roll in that game. It really shouldn't be competitive at all. Yep. And you start just counting the wins here, I really think Notre Dame's going to be lucky if they can get to 7 to 8 wins to end the year. And if
Marcus, they're going to get 4.
If Marcus Freeman ends his first year and can't get this team to a bowl, the same team that was very close to making a playoff a year ago, I don't know that they hang on to him. I think he is in real trouble. This game this weekend at UNC, it's almost like a must-win game for him. If you start off 1-3, how do you get to a bowl? Where are the wins on that schedule?
So look, BYU, they got beat by Oregon this week, but BYU is still an electric team.
They are, and they got beat at Oregon. Oregon's got one of the best home field advantages in the country. I really think if Georgia had had to go to Eugene and play, it's a different game just because it's such a weird environment. That one I'm fine with. All right.
That Syracuse game too, because it looks like it should be a win. Syracuse just beat Purdue, and then Purdue held toe-to-toe with Penn State. And
they did.
Penn State looks pretty good right now. So
yeah.
Tough season for Notre Dame.
Next question. USC is off to a 3-0 start. They're averaging 51 points per game. Defense, been a little suspect. Ben, are they a playoff contender?
Heck yeah. I've been saying it from the beginning that they are. Look, this team is built from some of the best players. It's like if you had NCAA fantasy. That's what this team is. You got you got one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best wide receivers, some of the best running backs, solid lines, and a good defense. That's a playoff contender. And the fact that they have a solid coach that can put it all together and make sure that these guys play well, it's shown on the field. And I expected this to happen. I'm happy to see it. I think USC should win the Pac-12 and should make it to the playoff.
Yeah, no, I think they've still got a battle ahead. It's a long season. You still got to play Utah. This weekend, they're going to travel to Oregon State. I think that's the first real true test for USC. Oregon State's a good football team, and I would expect USC to win. But you're going to get out of the Coliseum. You've got a conference road game. You're playing a team that's very good on both sides of the ball. We'll see how they do. But yeah, Ben, I mean, through this point, they look like a legit team. I mean, Jordan Addison is still a phenomenal receiver. Caleb Williams is a great quarterback. I thought this team was going to have some chemistry questions going into the year. They really don't. And I think it's a tip of the cap to Lincoln Riley's ability to build an offense, ability to create plays. I think Lincoln Riley is. I don't know how good of a game manager he is. Like, I think Brian Kelly wins games just because of how tremendous he is at managing games. But what I think Lincoln Riley is I think he's one of the best play designers that's ever been associated with college football. I think he's incredible at building plays, getting guys open. And if you just have good route runners, anybody can get open in that system. I mean, it's just that good. I'm interested. I hope, by the way, they get to the playoff. Like, to me, my dream is I want to see Georgia's defense against USC's offense, and I'm going to sit back with about 6 beers, a big thing of popcorn, and I just want to watch that puppy. Like, to me, that would be the dream playoff game, as if USC and Georgia play each other, because I honestly, I don't know, what does that even look like. Like, I think that would be fascinating to watch. But yeah, USC is definitely in there. All right, Nebraska, they fired Scott Frost this week. They just got pounded by Oklahoma. It looks like now they've got zero shot at making a bowl. They're 1-2. They're 1-3. Their one win is against North Dakota. Are they dead as a program? Not a team, but a program. I'm going to argue they are not dead as a program. I think, and I'm going to rectify this a little bit. I think Nebraska could still win. I think this program could still be a very good team if they can find a coach that can give them some sort of a unique advantage. The one thing Nebraska has is they have a tremendous financial backing. They always have. They have a tremendous fan base. This is the team that puts more people in their spring game than any other college football team. It is a diehard fan base. And if you look at the programs like Iowa, like Minnesota, Iowa State, that I think is Nebraska's path. And if they think they could create a path like that where we're going to be super strong defensively, we're going to bring in a smart coach who is no nonsense. Don't bring in a guy like Scott Frost who's trying to create like this elusive game plan and is just going to outsmart the room. That won't work at Nebraska. You need a good running game. You need a good defense. Recruit local kids. Just be the best team in your state when it comes to recruiting. And take the model that Minnesota and Iowa have really laid out for you, in Wisconsin even. It may not necessarily ever get you a championship, but you are a better program and you don't have the same disadvantages as those schools. So if you took that model, you could beat Iowa at their own game. You could beat Wisconsin at your own game. I think if you look at the recent hires with Nebraska, they've just completely outthought the room. They want to be USC. They want to be Miami. You've never been that. Stop trying to pretend that that's what you are. Go hire a no-nonsense football coach. Look at what Florida hired this past year with Billy Napier. That's a really, really Nebraska type hire. That is who you should be going after. A no-nonsense coach who has a really great defense, a really strong running game. And no, I don't think the program's dead if you do that. But I think if you're just going to try and cycle through these really great offensive guys who don't understand Nebraska recruiting, like, I don't think it's going to work. Like, Scott Frost is to Nebraska what Justin Fuente was to Virginia Tech. Doesn't want to recruit the local kids, wants to outthink the room with every game plan. That will not work.
So Nebraska hasn't been good in over a decade. Nebraska hasn't been worth a crap in over a decade. Yeah. I remember so the first job I got out of school, which was almost 10 years ago, I was in a training class with a guy from Nebraska, and they had just gotten crushed like 44-0 from some podunk team or something like that. I don't remember who they played, but I remember Nebraska got destroyed. I was like, dude, what's happening? And he's like, man, we suck. And it has been that way for 10 years. Nebraska was a powerhouse because of historic television deals, similar to the way that Notre Dame was a powerhouse. That doesn't matter anymore. The brand recognition, look, you're in for your Nebraska logo is different than the N on the helmets, and both are iconic, maybe. But what does that mean to this generation? None of the kids in school watched Nebraska and thought, man, I want to go there. I want to go to the middle of nowhere in a cornfield where they spend $7.5 million extra because they didn't want to wait 3 weeks to fire a coach so I can lose games. Nah. Look, maybe they're one of the best program historically in the Big Ten. And that's fine. Historically, they were. But none of the kids leaving middle school and high school watching Nebraska get their tails kicked every single week want to go to Nebraska. So
Well,
whoever they hire is going to have their work cut out for them to build this program from basically nothing to something that
of
matters
course.
again.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't disagree with a lot of what you just said, Ben. The one thing that I would kind of bring it back to is again, I don't think Nebraska is going to be like they were in the 80s and early 90s where they're just one of the dominant forces. I don't think they will be that. But that doesn't mean they have to be like the new Northwestern or like Syracuse. Like they don't have to be the bottom of the barrel of the conference. If Iowa can win the conference and be as good of a program as they are, Nebraska can too. There's not a geographical advantage to Iowa. Iowa doesn't have a financial advantage, don't have a TV contract advantage. Again, you can be better than Iowa if you just follow their model. You don't have to overcomplicate this thing because you've got the better sources than Iowa does. You do have the better history there. You are not ever going to be Ohio State. Just it's not happening. You're not ever going to be, I won't even say Oklahoma, but you could get to a point where 9 to 10 wins a year. That's a possibility, and that I think is okay. Get to that point, maybe have a surprise year. That's where I think you can go.
Yeah,
Um,
if I'm Nebraska's AD, I'm telling my boosters, do you know how much corn $7.5 million would buy? And then I'm putting it into a fund and waiting 3 more weeks. And that fund is going to be NIL money to actually buy some players that are worth a crap that can bring my team up to speed.
yeah,
Because man, they
I
look
mean,
bad.
whoever takes over that program, it is not a fix in one year. It is going to take a while. And I mean, we saw in just 2 years what LSU became after a couple bad recruiting classes, yada yada, had a bunch of transfers come in, now they leave. And we can see like Brian Kelly's got his work cut out for him. Well, what's happened to LSU really the past year and a half, 2 years, that's been Nebraska for the past decade. So imagine that being done to your program and how much work it's going to take to bring them back. It's going to take a while, but I don't think they're dead. All right, here's the last question of if we had a mailbag. So Auburn was 2-0. I'd save the best for last here, Ben. They got absolutely crushed by Penn State. The boosters wanted to fire Brian Harsin last year, tried to concoct a story to do so. It did not work. There's obviously a massive disconnect between Harsin and what feels like the inner workings of the school. Is it time to go ahead and cut that cord?
Is it time? No. Is it going to happen? Yes. And here's why. One of the biggest protectors of Brian Harsin's job was our athletic director, Alan Green. Alan Green is gone now. Alan Green stepped down probably because boosters were mad that he protected Harsin in the offseason. Harsin is a dead man walking. And it sucks because Auburn's going to have to pay a ton of money to get rid of him, just like we did the last coach 2 years ago. And the person they bring in is just going to be a puppy dog for the boosters. And that's the way it works at Auburn. You have no control. You are a puppet for the boosters. People that have control are the car banks, Bobby Louder and Yellowwood man himself. So besides that, you could hire a Yellowwood man as the coach, and we'll perform about the same. So
Yeah.
sucks for Harson. I think he's a solid coach. I think he'd do great at Nebraska. Hire him. But yeah, he's done
Yeah.
at Auburn.
I think, and this is kind of exactly what I was saying about Scott Frost, Ben. I think when you know you're gonna move on, I I just don't think you wait. I don't believe in that. I think you go ahead and cut the cord immediately. I don't see any advantage to waiting, and you've got your bye week there after the game at Ole Miss. And I mean, if you look at Missouri's schedule leading up to that bye week, Missouri's this week, LSU the week after, Georgia on October 8th. That'll be in Georgia, and then October 15th to go at Ole Miss. Maybe they can beat Missouri, but I think that's at least 3 losses right in front of you. And so I don't think it looks pretty here. But the main thing is Brian Harsin. Is there any scenario in which Brian Harsin is the coach of Auburn at the start of next season? I don't see it. I think he's
Nope.
done. So if you know that, go ahead and cut the cord. You need to fix the recruiting class. You're going to need to save face. I think you need to give whoever you want an opportunity to interview for the rest of the year as kind of the interim head coach. Let that happen. And then send a message that if you're going to come coach at Auburn, these are the expectations. And this is not like getting beat by Penn State by 30 at home. We're not cool with that. Like, we expect to at least be competitive in that game. I'd go ahead and do it, Ben. And I don't think it necessarily means Brian Harsin can't coach. I think Brian Harsin was set up for failure. But
He
if you're
definitely
going to
was.
set him up like this, like, why keep him there? I think it's bad for Brian Harsin. I think it's bad for Auburn. Nobody's going to win by him remaining the head coach at Auburn University. Just go ahead and cut the cord.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree, but I don't know how the politics are going to work out at Auburn. It's a
Yeah.
political place for sure.
So let's talk about our next segment. It's trending up and trending down. We're each going to give you a team that or player or coach that we think is trending in the right direction. Then we'll go to a player or coach that is trending in the wrong direction. We'll do that 3 times. So I'm going to start us off. So trending up, basketball schools. Think about this stat. Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, and Syracuse are all 3-0 right now. I don't know that those 4 programs have all started the year off 3-0, maybe ever. It's absolutely crazy. And then Duke is going to play at Kansas this week. Listen, game day should be at Kansas for this game. Like, this is a big, massive game between Duke and Kansas. I'm excited to watch it. Yeah, so I think these programs, the way they're playing, it's really fun. It's cool. I think at least 2 of them, it's probably not going to last. Kentucky feels like the most stable and talented of the 4, but it is, these other 3, this was not on our radar a few weeks ago that they'd all be undefeated.
And those are your 3 ups?
No, that's
Okay.
that's one of my trending ups.
Very nice. Yeah, so we've already talked about it. My trending ups were individual teams, but my trending up is Michigan Wolverines. Look, from top to bottom, they look incredible. We all were making fun of Harbaugh's biblical renditions of his starting picks for quarterback early on. He made the right call when it came to the starter, and now because of injury, they are full steam ahead under JJ McCartney, and they look pretty unstoppable right now. So definitely big trending up for Michigan.
Yeah, mine is going to be Minnesota. And I know Minnesota's schedule has been New Mexico State, Western Illinois, and what may be the worst FBS team in the country, Colorado. But the Gophers are currently outscoring their opponents 149-17 through 3 games. And then I start looking at the rest of the Big Ten West right now. They feel like, to me, the team that is most likely to win the West Division at this point. I love what PJ Fleck is doing. I think this week it's a massive game. They have to go to Michigan State, who's going to be fresh off that loss to Washington. But then they're going to get Purdue, Illinois, Penn State, Rutgers, Nebraska, Northwestern, Iowa, Wisconsin. Like, I start looking at this Iowa or this Minnesota schedule. I think they could legitimately finish off the year at like 10-2. They feel like a really good team. They don't feel one-sided. They can play offense. They can play defense. Can't really pass the ball, but it's a good football team.
Yep. My next up is, and this is for you, CJ, Liberty Flames. They went toe to toe with Wake Forest, and the only reason they didn't go to overtime is because they went for that 2-point conversion with all the steam behind them. And look, Liberty with was it Caden Salter as their quarterback and Hugh Freeze as their head coach. Handful of really good, talented players on the offense and defensive side of the ball. They're for real. Wake Forest is 3-0, number 19 in the nation. Really good team, and had to go toe to toe with Liberty, and could have lost. Said overtime happened. So, look, Hugh Freeze is probably one of the most targeted head coaches for some of these open jobs. He should be, but what he's done at Liberty has been incredible.
Yeah. So actually, Ben, that was my next one, was Liberty trending up. I'll show it to you right here. I don't know if you can see it, but Liberty Flame is trending up.
There you go.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and it's funny. Like, I saw, somebody post something like, there's never a win and a loss. I think it's just such bull crap. Like, yes, there are moral victories. You're a group of 5 team. You go down to Wake Forest, a ranked Power 5 team that's really good. I think you watch the way Clemson's played. Wake Forest could legitimately win the Atlantic Division this year. Like, that's a good football team. I don't know what else to tell you. The fact that Liberty went down there and hung with them for that long, it's amazing. But really what impressed me with Liberty was yesterday, their front 7 has to be one of the best front 7s in the country. Wake Forest had 21 rushing yards yesterday. Sam Hartman threw 2 picks. Like, that's a really good quarterback. That's a really good offensive line. And Liberty's defensive line made Wake Forest look pedestrian. Like, I watched that and I thought, oh my word. Like, it's not just the fact that we did this to UAB and Southern Miss, but like, legitimately, this is what Liberty's defense is capable of. I think it's one of the better defenses, I think, in the country. And you start looking at their schedule too, by the way, it's really, really workable the next several weeks. They're going to get Akron at home next week. I'll be at that one. We're going to go at Old Dominion October 1st. They're going to go at UMass October 8th. They're going to get Gardner Webb on October 15th. And then October 22nd, they're going to play BYU at home. Keep an eye. Game day may want to come see 2 one-loss teams battle it out in Lynchburg. I hope so. But yeah, I mean, you start looking up at the schedule, like BYU and Arkansas for like the only games on the schedule that I think are probable losses. The rest of them for like games Liberty should win. And if they're going to play like that against Wake, I mean, like, that's a really, really good game. So I was thoroughly impressed with what I saw from Liberty.
Yep, agreed. That 2-point or that onside kick, even after the attempted 2-point conversion, I thought Liberty had it. So that was wild as well.
I didn't mind. Like, everybody wants to argue, they shouldn't have gone for 2. The defense was playing great, but the defense.
I mean, look at LSU.
Well, here's the thing: when you are on the road playing a ranked team, and you are a group of 5 team, and you've got an opportunity to take the lead, go for it. Your kicker had been terrible. There is no guarantee that your kicker even makes that extra point. Like, just none. I mean, Hugh Freeze was already upset with them. Second thing, the reason why I'm okay with it is, even if you make it, I think Wake Forest probably comes down and get a field goal. Now, you could say, well, okay, but they'd only be up by 1 if they got the 2-point conversion. Wouldn't they go get a field goal anyways? And I think that last drive would feel different being down 1. And, oh my gosh, if we don't get into field goal range, we lose this game versus It's a tie game. If we get into field goal range, great, we can win it. If not, who cares? We'll beat these guys in overtime anyways. Like, it's just a different thought process. So I totally support Hugh Freeze saying, no, let's go for the win right now. Let's try and take the lead. Let's not leave this thing up to chance. And if you look at the play call, I thought the play initially, I thought, okay, what are we doing? Like, this is a bad play call. But then I went back and reviewed it. He's got a guy open in the end zone. It's totally up to CJ Yerbo to throw the ball. He had a slight hole, tried to work it. It disappeared very quickly. That's what good teams do. Couldn't get
Yep.
in.
If he
Totally
steps
fine.
back instead of running forward, he's got two open wide receivers as your quarterback and the actual wide receiver in the end zone. So it was just a great play call, bad execution. Should have stepped back and gone for the pass.
Yeah, 100%.
Last team that I have trending up, the Oregon Ducks. So at the beginning of the season, Oregon got obliterated by Georgia 49-3. And we were all laughing, saying, oh yeah, Bo Nix is Bo Nix versus Georgia. Same old, same old. Well, Oregon doesn't have to play Georgia every single week. And if you look at the Pac-12, they played a future Big 12. Is that who BYU is going to, or are they going to Pac-12? One of the two.
Big 12. They're going to the Big 12.
Yeah. Future Big 12 team who is high-powered, very well, granted, Eugene, Oregon, but still doubled the score. Bo Nix actually looked really good against them. 222 yards, 13 of 18, 2 touchdowns. And if you look at what's happening with Oregon in the next few weeks, they play Washington State, Stanford, Arizona, UCLA, Cal, Colorado, and Washington. The first 5 of those games probably go in Oregon's favor until they play Washington, Utah, and Oregon State at the end of the year. Really, Oregon's got a high path of, being a decent team in the Pac-12. So after being ranked, getting smacked down, everyone thinking that they were a joke, they actually look pretty good and they're trending up.
Yeah. All right, let's go over to trending down. So my first trending down team is going to be Houston. 1-2, lost to Kansas by 18. Their one win was against Texas San Antonio, a game they won by 2 points. In the Kansas game yesterday, they had 2 of their own teammates fighting yesterday. Just looked absolutely insane. And I mean, I think the schedule is pretty workable. But listen, I think Dana Holgerson has got to figure this thing out. They look really messy out of the gate. They look like they've got absolutely no defense. Like, I know, Ben, you did a preview on them a few weeks ago before the season started, and we were both excited about this team. But the more I watch them, they don't look good at all. They look like maybe they're going to get to 6 wins, perhaps, but they look really rough out of the gate.
Yeah, Houston is embarrassing. Almost as embarrassing as losing to Penn State 41-12. I have Auburn as my second. I'll go ahead and take them. Fine. Look, it's been a long time since I've watched an Auburn game and been like, you know what? I feel like I'd rather take a nap. It's been a long time since that. I actually laid down in the middle of it and I woke up and we were down another 2 touchdowns and I was like, I'm going back to sleep. Look, we were talking about this earlier about the Brian Harsin thing. Right now, I didn't know who the new AD was. Apparently, Auburn named a new interim athletic director, this past week, 4 days ago. So 3 days prior to the matchup between Penn State. Typically, you need an athletic director in place to hire and fire a coach. So Rich McGlynn, 17 years in the Auburn Athletics. He's the interim administrator for the athletic department. We'll see what happens. But Auburn is trending down and probably going to be down for a little while.
Yeah, and I don't see an interim athletic director firing anybody, but
yeah,
I mean, I guess like Auburn's a weird program where the boosters could just call them and say, "Hey, make the move." I mean,
yeah, Mr. Yellow would just come in and do it himself.
Yeah,
I don't know any of these people's names, but
yeah. My next one is Miami and Mario Cristobal. Listen, they came in with a ton of hype. I still picked UNC to win the Coastal. And then after I watched yesterday, I mean, I think Miami's going to win some games for sure. But I just think this is always going to be a limited team under his coaching staff. I think it's like a 9-10 win program. That's what it kind of feels like to me. They don't feel like they're going to automatically win the Coastal or anything like that. Like I think they're going to have a couple losses along the way. You can see the talent. That all looks fine, but he was just outcoached by Jimbo Fisher. We
Mm-hmm.
spent last week's podcast talking about Jimbo's probably in the hot seat. And I mean, that whole game, it didn't look like Texas A&M was more talented than Miami. Just you watching it, like, oh, A&M's like the better coach team. That's all it was. And I saw that a lot with Cristobal when he was at Oregon. I think we're seeing it more of here. And I just don't know how he ever gets over that. By the way, the coaching staff they put together there between the coordinators, having Charlie Strong just on the advisory or whatever, like it's a legit coaching staff. They shouldn't look that inept in a game like that. That should be the best of your coaching, not the worst or not the typical. And I came away very unimpressed with Miami.
Yeah, a 17-9 loss is not abysmal, but they should have been the better team. We've seen kind of what Texas A&M is this year. Granted, Texas A&M just came off of a bad loss, and they were going to bring everything to this at home. Miami had to be on the road, but I just really wanted to see more out of Miami in this game. I expected them to, do well, and all they could do is kick field goals. So field goals aren't going to win it for you. Really disappointed in the Hurricanes.
Yeah. My next one, or no, wait, you've
Here's
got
my
one.
next one.
Yeah,
Yep.
you go.
My next one trending down. Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah.
Put up a fight against Missouri State. They were trailing in the first quarter, 0-7. Then they were trailing at half as well. They didn't really come back until the fourth quarter, where they scored 21 in order to actually win this game. So yes, your depth is better than Missouri State, but oh my gosh, that looked really bad for 3 quarters.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you start looking more at Arkansas right now, it is kind of like I don't know, like it. I know we were really impressed with them a couple weeks ago, but then it's like, okay, well, you beat South Carolina. They don't really look that great right now. And you beat Cincinnati. Well, Cincinnati yesterday, I don't even know if they ended up winning, but I know Cincinnati was struggling with, like, I think Miami of Ohio for most of the game. And so I start looking more at Arkansas, and it's like, okay, I like KJ Jefferson. He looks really good, but I feel like something from that team is missing. So I'm talking about outside of my top 10. I don't feel like they're there anymore. We'll see if maybe that was just a fluke. My
Yeah.
last team trending down is Louisville Cardinals and Scott Satterfield. 1-2 to start the year, just lost to Florida State. Malik Cunningham, by the way, I had massive expectations for this kid coming in. He's thrown 1 touchdown through 3 games, and he's thrown 3 picks. That is not going to get it done for this team. When we previewed Louisville to start the year, we both felt like this was probably a 7-8 win team. If Clemson was down, maybe a dark horse to win the Atlantic. And now I look at them and I don't feel like they're a bowl team. Maybe they can recover. They did beat Central Florida. Syracuse looks better than what we thought, but I mean, their schedule here, they've got few easy games coming up: South Florida, Boston College, Virginia, but then it's Pitt, Wake Forest, Clemson, NC State, Kentucky. 5 ranked teams still to play. They've already got 2 losses. It's starting to feel like Louisville's ceiling is going to be 5-7, not 9-3. So, and if that happens, I think Scott Satterfield could be on the chopping block.
Yeah, Louisville not meeting expectations yet. Not playing good football.
I tell you what, there was a coach yesterday in that Arkansas game that maybe Louisville should take a look at. Bobby Petrino. Might want to bring him back to campus.
Good. I mean, Oh.
Listen, Louisville should hire Bobby Petrino as their football coach and Rick Pitino back as their basketball coach. Yeah, I have no idea what the ethics would be like on that campus. Probably terrible, but you'd be great again in both sports.
Just watch out. Bob Petrino might be coming to Auburn. So
Ooh, that would be an interesting hire.
it's who they wanted to hire when they wanted to fire Tubbs, 12, 14 years ago? Something like that.
I can imagine they bring in Petrino. There's no way.
Boosters love him. The
To bring in
boosters
a
love
coach
him.
from Missouri State?
Yeah. Dude, we just brought in some dude from Boise State. What does it matter? Podunk Nowhere
Boise
State.
State's a great group of 5 team.
Now, here's the thing. All the boosters care about is the head coach going to let me stand on the sideline during football games? Bobby Petrino will.
Probably a little bit more, too.
He'll throw some ragers.
Yeah.
Look, my trending down is a statement from last year, November 24th, 2021. Michigan State coach Mel Tucker agrees to 10-year, $95 million contract.
I told you it was a mistake. I said this is way too early, and my goodness, again they disappoint.
Yeah, he got crushed in 2 of the last 3 games of the season, and then to Washington loses 38 or 39 to 28. Like, what are you doing?
Well, and here's the thing. Everybody's talking about yesterday, oh, it's amazing Washington's well coached again. I'm like, okay, whenever you have a game where it's noticeable that the coaching looks great, what does that say about the coach on the other sideline? Like when it's that noticeable, and I don't think the talent disparity is that big, by the way. I think Washington and Michigan State are about even. Maybe Michigan State even has better players.
Michigan State has better players.
So there you go. So, yeah, I mean, I think Mel Tucker – I don't know. I don't think he's a bad coach by any means, but I think there was kind of this thought process with Michigan State last year that, oh my gosh, USC might go higher and we got to give them this massive contract. And they did. And it's like, whoa, we jumped the gun on that.
Yep. So have fun. At least you got him for 10 years and he's not an option for Auburn.
There you go. All right. So there's your podcast, Fourth String Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Ben, you have a game you're looking forward to this week.
Oh, man. It's not Auburn, Missouri. I'll tell you that. Give me a second and I will tell you.
You want to go take a nap? That'll be a good one to
watch. There you go.
I got to tell you, I'm really interested to watch Florida and Tennessee. Florida barely escaping with the win over South Florida. I had that pick, by the way. Tennessee's look great, but I think Florida is just a disciplined football team. I think Tennessee is a lot of explosiveness, not so much discipline. So I want to watch that one. Texas and Texas Tech. Texas is just a 4.5 point favorite at Texas Tech. If they lose, there's going to be questions. If they win, there's going to be a ton of excitement. So super excited to watch that one. And then Wisconsin at Ohio State. I fully expect Ohio State to win. But if Graham Mertz, if that is your guy going forward, he has got to have a good game this weekend.
All right, I've got a couple for you now. Arkansas at Texas A&M, 2 programs that should play really good football in a stadium with a 12th man. Arkansas is on my trending down, but I think they could definitely rebound this week. Texas A&M, I don't know who they are or what they are. I feel like Arkansas should be able to beat them, but who knows? Maybe Arkansas was looking forward. Maybe that's why they took them to the fourth quarter to beat Missouri State. But I'm looking forward to Arkansas taking on Texas A&M. I'm picking Arkansas on that one. Michigan versus Maryland. So Maryland is 3-0, not making any noise about it, but Maryland has been playing some good football. Now Michigan looks amazing, and Maryland has played Buffalo, Charlotte, and SMU. Now they've won those games. They looked really good in the first 2, struggled with SMU, won 34-27. They'll probably get blown out by Michigan, but I'm excited to see Michigan take on a high-powered offense with the defense that they've had so far. And then Clemson, Wake Forest. Look, Clemson, Wake Forest just went toe to toe with Liberty. It's time for you to blow a team out of the water and make a statement. This is your time. So Clemson has to go to Wake Forest, and really, depending on how Clemson performs in this game, it just shows you on my up and up with the Flames really where they're at as well as a program. So excited to see that one too.
No, that's going to be a good one, and I think that Michigan Maryland game, Ben, Maryland's such a good team. Like I think they're going to end there 8-4. It would not shock me at all if that game goes down to the wire. Like, would not be shocked. It also wouldn't shock me if like Michigan beats them like 42-10 because I think Michigan's just that good. But
Yep.
yeah, I think that game's got a lot of variables. That'll be fun. All right, that's it, everybody. Y'all have a good one. Enjoy week 4. We're out.